feel free to gather closer this way. So I just wanted to introduce myself and thank you all for coming. I'm Megan Rakepsel. I'm the gallery director here at the Julio Fine Arts Gallery. And I am beyond thrilled to have all of you here to celebrate these incredible artists and this incredible exhibition and this incredible juror who have done this work for us to see. And it's so lovely to be in community and be able to have conversations with each other. And so I really appreciate everyone for coming out tonight and supporting our artists and supporting our community. This exhibition is just something I really wanted to explore, is just this community of fiber artists in the area, and the work is so wide in its variety and so incredible in the community aspect. Like just even this quilt over here is an example of how we can bring people together with one kind of medium. And so I wanted to think about ways to bring fiber arts into this gallery. And so I reached out to Victoria Pass, who is a professor at MICA.
I feel like I'm in the pressure of like the orchestra where they like applaud everyone as they come on.
So I reached out to her, and she graciously agreed to jury a fiber arts exhibition and pulled together these 12 artists in one artist community group. And I couldn't be happier with the results, and I'm so grateful that she said yes, and that we have this show keeping it together. So I'm going to turn it over to her to give a little talk about what she came up with and the artists in the show. And thank you again so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan. It's been really a pleasure to work with you. And thank you so much to all the artists and those of you who are able to come tonight. I'm so happy to have you all together. Are there going to be lots of puns? Yeah, we're talking about fiber, so there's going to be a lot of puns. It just like naturally happens somehow. So so Megan asked me if I would be interested in jurying a show on fiber, and I was really excited to do it. And when we were like figuring out the call, I was just like let's just call for fiber art and like see what people are working on. And so we just put out this really broad call, and one thing that I said is I wanted it to be like broadly defined. I wanted people to feel like they could include themselves as fiber artists, even if they weren't working with something that seemed like really obviously like fiber, like our beautiful quilts, right? And I was really thrilled that like that sort of worked. So we have, for instance, the work by Andrea there. And you'll forgive me, I'm going to be like frantically looking for artist names on my little phone. Or maybe you'll tell me artist names.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we'll do.
Marcia Salzberg.
Yes, Marcia Salzberg, thank you. And so this is a piece that's called Rain, and it's made from newspaper sleeves woven through chicken wire. And it's not fiber materials necessarily, but it's a weaving. And I was really thrilled that we got this piece. Elaine Zukowski's beautiful knot on the wall back there also. Elaine makes really amazing jewelry, and I was so excited to see her work come in when we had the call. And she's working with knots, which are a very kind of ancient technique of working with fiber, but using glass beads in that work. So it was really great to see people kind of responding to that broad call for fiber kind of broadly defined. And the other thing that was really exciting when we got the submissions in was that there were, here's the first one, so many common threads it just happens, I don't even intend it, to what people had sent. And, because we've all shared this, horrible year and a half, whatever it's been now, in which time seems to stretch out and get smaller, and we've all been in these really different circumstances than we usually are. No matter what our particular circumstances is, I think we've all shared this massive disruption. And so it was so beautiful to see how all of these different artists were responding to that disruption in different ways. And I think one thing that I was reflecting on when I was writing the curatorial statement was the way that fiber is this material that all of us have a connection to. It's not like most art materials like bronze or oil paint that like most of us will never use and will never really interact with. Like we're all wearing fiber, right? And I've seen beautiful fiber around me on so many people. And we've all been protected by fiber this year, whether it's non-woven fiber like my mask or fabric like some of your masks. And so it's something that connects us in a really deep way, and also something that connects us to our history, like our really, really, really ancient history. The technologies of spinning thread and weaving are ancient technologies, and a lot of artists in this exhibition, I think, connected to those histories of fiber in really beautiful ways. So behind me, Annika Cheng's work, these mahjong tiles, and this chengsong, beautiful American chengsong. Chengsong is also known as a qipao, this garment. Her work is reflecting on her own identity as a member of the Sino diaspora and sort of thinking about the ways in which Chinese identity and Chineseness has been exotified in American culture. And mahjong is one of the sort of mahjong became a kind of fad in the 1920s and is still something that's played now. And I don't know if people remember there was a controversy not too long ago where an American company of white women were producing modern American mahjong tiles, which I think tells you a lot about how Chinese identity and a Chinese game, piece of Chinese culture, is portrayed and understood in America as being something that is ancient and not modern, not recognizing that Chinese culture is modern and ongoing and has a history just like American culture does. And I thought that this qipao that Annika created that is based on one from your childhood, yeah? This handmade qipao that is extended through lace to sort of grow with the body, I thought was such a beautiful metaphor for thinking about how our identity is a part of us, it grows, it changes, it's often read upon our bodies by other people, by how we look and what context that we're in, and it can be a difficult thing to sort of grapple with. And I thought, what a amazing metaphor to think about that by taking a garment from her personal history and then adapting it as a work of art, but as also as a garment now. And I'm a fashion historian, so garments are just kind of maybe my language. So these, I think, are objects and works of art that tie in with sort of personal histories and personal identity in really interesting ways. And then now I'm probably going to go into the ping-ponging around the room. So these pieces, will someone over there remind me of the artist's first name on the label?
Yongqiang Chow.
Yuqiang Chow, yeah, thank you. So these three pieces are really fascinating. They're based on a Korean style of still life, the name of which I do not remember, but it's in my artist statement. But what I was so drawn to when I saw these was just the reference to sort of everyday routines and rituals, which I think a lot of the work in the exhibition reflects on. So the ritual of picking up the newspaper every day, and in these still lives you get these sort of bits and pieces of the everyday. And I think especially poignant to me was the one with the Amazon box and the sort of knitting things and a cupcake and a game controller, these things that we're now doing now that we're in our homes, we're not leaving, we're getting things delivered. And also I think a lot of us, another connection many of us have to fiber, if we're not artists ourselves, is maybe we knit as a hobby or we sew. I know a lot of friends who started amping up making their own clothes over the pandemic. So I think a lot of us turned to fiber for comfort as a kind of meditative process, and a lot of the artists talked about that in their statements. So these beautiful macrame pieces behind you, this artist talked about like this meditative process of knotting, and also beginning to think of herself as not just a hobbyist but as an artist over the pandemic, and really like leaning into this process as a way of coping with what was happening in the world, and the sort of all of the uncertainty around her. And then of course, since we're in that corner, we have these two beautiful quilts. So Rosalind's quilt on the left, which is all about kind of process, because it's made of remnants from other quilts. So it's what's called a second generation quilt. And Rosalind is one of the members of the African American Quilters Guild who works in an advisory and mentorship role with the Micah Quilt Group, who created this beautiful quilt here. So I love that we were able to have them together, sort of speaking to each other in this wonderful way. And the Micah Quilt Group, I'm biased because I'm a Micah professor, so I feel like I should just say that. But they've done this really amazing project where they've taken this work that has been ongoing for, I think, the last 10 years or so, a group who've gotten together and created quilts together to raffle off to raise funds for scholarships at Micah. And once we all left campus, they figured out how to do it remote. And so we're meeting over Zoom, and I think created something like 9 quilts over the course of the pandemic, which is 10. Yeah, 10 quilts, which is really incredible, especially when you see the, like just the astonishing beauty of just this one that we have here. And it represents the collective work of so many different hands and so many different minds and ideas kind of coming together in this beautiful symphony and this gorgeous quilt. And it really, again, like to go back to that idea of tradition, this really taps into the history of how quilts were often made collectively. So this is, part of the history of quilt making and quilting, that they were usually a group project that people worked together to make these objects, often women working together to make these objects. And so I think it's really exciting to see one that was created in this kind of digital virtual space, but is, this very real tactile physical object that offers warmth and comfort. And also to see sort of the intergenerational aspect of these two quilts side by side, of a quilter who was the mentor for this group of quilters, which includes people of all different ages and all different levels of experience and from all different walks of life, which is really exciting. So then we have this beautiful weaving back here, which is a reflection on place. So it's titled Miami Sunrise. What's our map? Is last name? Catherine, thank you so much. Catherine Mapp. See, I should have made sure that I had first names, but I just wrote last names on my list. What was I thinking? But Catherine Mapp's beautiful piece, reflecting on this place of Miami and the colors, but also the textures that she uses, and she talks in her artist statement about a whole lot of different influences like psychedelia and landscape, as well as her own identity, that are all, woven together in this beautiful textile. It's like you can't not do it. But I think it's really interesting to see how place in this time of like sometimes us being displaced or really locked in and attached to place is something that's reflected on by people in this work that they're doing. Susie Brandt's textiles on the wall over here, I think are this really like kind of incisive like statement about this last year. So you have the hand that's reaching out maybe for help or just to say like, I'm still here. The fists of the protests that have happened, particularly last summer. And then the Victory V for vaccines. And just this like beautiful color story that's a part of these, this sort of really vibrant way in which she tells the story through these textiles and these gestures that I think are very open-ended but speak really specifically to the moment that we're in now. And then This smaller piece, which was a little bit harder to see. Alec, can you remind me the name of the artist? What's Sylv. Yeah. So this includes actually a mask in it, and she uses a lot of kind of disposable plastics in her work and thinking about sustainability and reuse, which is one of the reasons I liked having it in conversation with the newspaper piece, as well as the There's No Place Like Home banner, which also uses scraps of yarn. And I think Susie's piece, that phrase, there's no place like home, that has so many, before this it had so many different resonances for us, but I think now it really does. And that beautiful sparkle that it has, which, reminds me of the blue of Dorothy's dress and the sparkle of her ruby slippers. And this was woven freehand, so the artist talked about sort of the kind of, just going step by step and putting it together slowly. And this process that was important in making this work. And then in thinking about staying at home, this work by Sacha Baskin is referencing a still from the reality show The Bachelor. And it's called, I love the title, this is called Martyr, Here for the Right Reasons. And if anybody is a fan of any reality TV show, people always say, I'm here for the right reasons, implying you're not here for the right reasons. And I love that title, because it, if you watch reality television, it has one layer of meaning for you. And also the idea of the martyr, the ways in which these televisual images, which probably a lot of us were consuming a lot more of over the last year or so, there are kind of modern myths and stories that are part of our everyday lives. And a show like The Bachelor, I think, has a lot to do with how heterosexual romance and the sort of myths of it are constructed and reified and reconstructed. And so I think it's really poignant to have that, and then also to think about, again, that relationship with the past, the fact that textiles have long been a place for storytelling, an ancient place for storytelling, and so sort of thinking about that relationship in this beautiful work. And then Alec Jedelson's Most Insecure is also, I think, as kind of a narrative piece, where he's using this woven beadwork to think about and sort of process through a relationship and think about, sort of playing with popular culture images, Miss Congeniality and the sort of pageant sashes, but then use that to express something really personal. And I think, again, that process of weaving as a sort of therapeutic process, which so many of the artists in this exhibition talked about as sort of the repetitious acts of doing that, and the meditation that allows you to process, to heal, to think through things, I think was really a kind of powerful theme. And what was really exciting about jurying the show is that it was just this open call, but once work came in, it was so clear that there were these very particular themes that were really exciting. So really, I think everyone who sent work in sent incredible work in, and the selection process was really picking out which stories we had room to tell in the space, and which pieces would resonate with one another. And so I hope that you all will find that as you look around and look at pieces, that they'll speak to one another and tell stories to each other, and maybe tell stories to you all, and perhaps even for any of us who are not makers, maybe give us a little bit of an incentive to maybe take out some needles, some thread, some yarn, even that good old, potholder maker of our youth, and, kind of tap into that potential of fiber as something which we can use to express ourselves in what I think of can be a really kind of primal way. So, yeah. And lots of artists are here, so ask them questions.